Namaste everyone. Namaste Abhishek.
Namaste.
So, hello everyone. I know we do this series regularly. Today we have a special guest, Abhishek. Of course, you know that he lives in Toronto and he's visiting us this week. And tomorrow happens to be Father's Day, so we are here. We just finished our beautiful meditation with Master Sunita. So I've said, Abhishek, you got to come here and share your wisdom, and especially tomorrow being Father's Day. So we want to discuss about Father's Day.
Absolutely. Really happy to be here and chatting with you, Suman. Yeah.
Excellent. So what are your thoughts on Father's Day? What is this figure called Father, and why do we celebrate this Father's Day?
Okay, so when I think about a father, I sort of usually try to think in terms of archetypes, right? And
Yes.
we've chatted a lot before around
Yeah.
different archetypes, and the archetype of the king comes to mind. And what is a good king? Right, at the end of the day, it's not, that energy of kingliness is taking care of yourself and your community. And that community can be your family, right?
Yeah,
It could
yeah.
be your colleagues at work. It can be your community, and it can actually be the entire nation, the entire country, and the world as a whole, right?
Yes,
So that
yes.
energy of someone that steps into that role where they're taking care of someone, right?
Yes.
And so that to me is king, father. They tend to really fit within the same kind of
Yeah.
frame in my mind.
Yeah. So the more like a protector, the sustainer kind of a personality.
And even almost the caregiver as well.
The caregiver, yes,
Yeah.
yes. But it's very important to understand this, dears, because unfortunately, in the world we think, oh, mother and father are two separate figures, and Master Sunita always says that, mother, father is a personality that is there in everyone, but unfortunately we segregate this, and they say, oh, Mother's Day, Father, Father's Day, but there is father in the mother, there is mother in the father,
That's
right?
Yeah.
So that is very important to understand that we all have both the energies, and we all have the capability to bring out those two energies, even though we, of course, celebrate in this modern world a Mother's Day and a Father's Day.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. The thing that they have in common is that they care for their community, they care for their family, they care for their group, right?
Yes.
And they're as life givers, right?
Yes.
They're not only life givers and sustainers in a very practical sense, potentially taking care of the physical needs of the people that they
Yes.
show care for, but their mental and emotional needs as well, right?
Yes.
In order to help them nurture and help that group grow, right?
Yes.
And I think that leads us to, when we think about self-care, some of the pains around what it takes to actually step into that true role and do it in a way that is not only effective but of the highest nature, right?
Yeah.
And some of those pains, when I think about it, are people not stepping into their own self-care,
Yes.
being able to take care of themselves from a physical standpoint, from an emotional and a mental standpoint, right?
Yeah.
And we've chatted about some of those pains. Maybe you want to just expand that a little
In
bit.
fact, the moment you said king, what does a king do, right?
Yeah.
King doesn't sit and eat there and grow a big tummy and then, fall sick, right? He's that role model figure,
Yeah.
right? So he takes care of his body. He's always ready as a warrior, as a protector of the country, right? And as a provider, he's ready to work hard. So for that, of course, he needs the physical fitness,
That's
right? Unfortunately, in the modern world we see today, we don't see that. Like you said, there is that big gap there. Yes, they think that, oh my God, I'm working hard for my family, I'm carrying this burden of the family, but they fail to give that physical care. So that's the first gap. And then the second gap is that mental one-pointedness. There is so much of scattered mind instead of having that one-pointed attention, starting with self-care, and of course automatically you will be able to care for people around you and then the world. And then emotionally also there is a huge gap, because they get emotionally entangled. They draw this simple circle, small circle, and say, oh my God, my daughter, my son, my wife. Yes, it is important, but that entanglement can cause a lot of problems, right? And I've seen, within my own family, there were situations. I'll give a reference of my own father. A few years back when I was going through my own piece of challenges, he used to be like, oh my God, my son is going through this, I'm a bit worried and all that. But I used to tell my father, that doesn't really help, right? What helps is to take a step back, right? And say, yes, I'm there for you. And when you're able to show that strength and be the role model,
Yep.
then automatically that resonates. It's all the energy, right? We carry that energy. So when you become that energy of that kingliness, that person who is there to protect and care and sustain her, makes a big difference. And that is where I think as a modern world, we all need to raise up to is start with that self-care piece.
Right.
Give that time for yourself so that you know yourself. In fact, I'll also share another interesting situation about my own life. Until I met Sunita, I thought I was this perfect whole figure, because yes, I had a great dad, who was a role model in terms of discipline, time management, being humble, being good, giving, and all those wonderful qualities I've attained through practice, because I used to see him as a very disciplined person,
Right.
a very person who was always on time and all those qualities. But then after I came to Sunita, I realized that there is more than that. To realize oneself, one has to reveal that inner child. There is a lot of cleansing and purification that needs to happen.
Right.
And unfortunately, we don't see that. We get married, and then after that, you become a father, and then you get into this role, and then you think, oh my God, I got to carry this burden. No, it is in fact effortless when you realize that inner child. When you realize that inner child, everything is effortless. You don't have to tell. Yes, it is important to teach your children being affirmative and clear about what is important, what is right, what is wrong, but always bring out that inner child so that you are lighter, feeling lighter, and then people around you feel lighter, and they are resonating with that vibration.
Yeah.
What do you say about being that role model?
Yeah, I think the piece I'm taking away from what you're saying is people, there's people that take it on as a burden, and that's a very unnatural expression of being a father, of that kingly sort of energy, right?
Yes.
Versus people that take it on much more naturally.
Yes.
People that really just sort of really step into it and they own it completely. And how do they do that? And just from my experience of people that I've seen that are very successful in that role, and then success by seen from the aspect of they're raising their kids well, you can tell they're very intentional about what they do. You can tell it comes very naturally to them. They've really taken ownership of how they think, how they take care of themselves,
Mm-hmm.
how they process their emotions, how they take complex things and simplify it, right? And really understand how to separate their own ego and their own kind of their own insecurities from how they actually interact with this child, with this other individual, right?
Yes.
So a child could trip and fall down and start crying, right? And there'd be two different reactions there. One is, oh my God, and they'd be disturbed by the whole thing and really try to take care of this child. But what they're not realizing in that moment is that they're not in service, because their anxiety is coming through, and that child is becoming even more aggravated.
Yes.
Whereas I've seen others that take a step back and just sit down and smile and look at the child, and really just try to point out all the things that they could focus on.
Yeah.
Beyond just a little
Exactly.
small fall, right? And then the kid, seconds later, this child is back up and running and moving, right? When you think about those two different approaches, what is different there? One was able to separate themselves from this emotional entanglement and tying their happiness to the micro happiness of their child, and to step into what is actually good for what I need to do. What does this child actually need? And then you could scale that not just from a father-child interaction to it could be a leader within a company. It could be an actual member of the community as they represent their the folks that they look after, right? So that to me is the two different representations.
Absolutely, that's
the people that own that energy more naturally, and the people that don't.
Absolutely, that's a role model father, right? Yeah. And then that is what they carry throughout their life, and then people resonate with it, whether it's your children, your wife, or extended members of your family, or society, like you said, or an organization. In fact, it reminds me of a small story about this saint, who was a person who used to preach and teach everything, right? And then one day a lady brings her son and complains to this teacher. The saint says, my son is constantly eating sweets and he's addicted to the sugar, and we have been trying to tell him to stop eating them, but he wouldn't do that. He's so much addicted. I know you're such a great saint. If you tell him once, I think he'll just stop it, right? And then he simply looks at the mother and says, can you come back after a couple of weeks, right? And then she's perplexed. It's like, I thought you would, it's very simple. You could just tell that right now. And she says, no, come back after 2 weeks. So after 2 weeks, she brings the boy again. And then at that time, he very nicely asks the boy to stop eating sweets. And then the mother is very happy. But she asks him, so why you have to take 2 weeks? Why couldn't you have said this a week, 2 weeks back? Yeah. So he says, I myself love sweets so much. Yeah. I've been eating sweets all my life. So for the first time, I had to actually practice not eating sweets. Right. And only then could I preach. So what Master Sunita always says, which resonates with the story, is practice what you preach. Once you practice, you don't even have to preach. They resonate. Children resonate with it. Your family resonates with it, and they start to imbibe those qualities, imbibe those behaviors. So it's very important, I think, for people to kind of realize their true self. Right. Unless you realize the true self, and that is where Sookshma and Master Sunita are helping people. And I see so many people who come to her with all these issues, parenting issues, children with addiction problems, a lot of turmoil and conflict between parents and children. And all it takes is for them to come down here and meditate, and suddenly, of course, Sunita doesn't, as you know, doesn't preach anything. She'll say, okay, just do these exercises, lie down. After the meditation, they suddenly come out and like, oh my God, we see everything so clearly, right? And then I see actually a lot of teenagers who come to Sunita, after they do the sessions, they go back to their parents and say, hey, you know what? You need to come to Sunita now, right? Yeah. Because these children have realized what exactly is that role modeling, because they're seeing that right there in Sunita, and they're experiencing the true self, and then they tell their parents, hey, you come to Sunita, and then you will realize yourself, and parenting becomes flawless, effortless, and easy.
Yeah, and this point of the role model is so powerful, because when we look at role models that actually resonate, like they're coming from their own experience, and that's why they're easy to follow. Yes. That's why they're great role models. Yes. Right? You can't convince someone intellectually to follow you. What you can do is be something that people just are naturally want to follow. Yes. Right? That's the only sustainable path. Like, that's the only way to be a true role model.
Be the change.
Be the change.
Be the
right?
change you want to see.
And I think, I mean, to your point around doing Sookshma, being and knowing yourself so well that you can understand how to explain something from your own perspective, and you've come against yourself, and you've dealt with it, and now you can move forward, right? Yes. And age doesn't even matter. When teenagers experience that energy, and they can go tell their parents. In fact, in that moment, they're being the parent, right? That's when they're being the father. They're taking care of their community by having experienced something, and now they become the role model. Yes. So I think to be a great role model, you have to have come up against yourself on that topic. You have to have crossed it on so many different levels. Yes. And probably, like, from a very practical sense, almost the quickest way to do it is, from just my experience of it, is like Sookshma meditation just crosses that bridge very quickly. Beautiful. Right? Within a 1 hour session, we can let go of so many, like, you can intellectualize this for years. You can write about it, right? But to actually experience it and come across your own internal sort of barriers and have them evaporate, and move forward. Absolutely. You start to like, you just have the energy of knowing yourself extremely well, and that is one of the qualities of a natural leader and a king and a father, right? Absolutely. Just to tie it into what probably like fatherhood represents, right? And a lifetime of doing this turns one into like an amazing father, an amazing king, right?
Absolutely. Beautifully said. In fact, Master Sunita says what you just explained in one line is right knowing, right? With information, what we are doing is, like, at intellectualization, we are making mind the master instead of making mind the slave, right? And in the Sookshma meditation, you get in touch with that knower, which is full of wisdom. It's there already. All that happens is she clears these layers of that intellectual stuff and crap that we accumulate in terms of reading and lectures and all of that stuff, and suddenly there is this blossoming of that inner child. And as you said it rightly, Every father needs this, dears. I know, people of my age group, my own friends say, Suman, how come you look so young? In fact, you're getting younger and younger every day. I'm like, dears, all that you need to do is take that one step to know yourself, work on yourself, realize yourself, care for this beautiful self. I know so many people are suffering. At my age, I know every single friend of mine has hypertension, blood pressure, prostate problem, arthritis, big tummies, emotional entanglements, mental problems, vices, abuse going on. So much in the community, dears. We can clear all of that only when you take that first step as a father to work on yourself so that you become the role model. And then you can naturally become father for many people. Sunita used to say, Suman, fatherhood doesn't mean that you're father of one person or 2 children or 3 children. Father of humanity. A global father, so that you provide that wisdom, care and love to millions of people out there. So thank you very much again, Abhi. I know you've come all the way from Toronto. Hopefully we'll catch you again in this series. Happy Father's Day to everyone. Happy Father's Day to my dearest father and to every father out there and every mother out there. Bring out that mother and father, and more importantly, bring out that inner child. Learning, like Abhi said, is a never-ending process, lifelong learning. Be open. Don't think, oh, I am a father, I know everything. Be open. I see so many people who come to Sunita. Initially, they are rigid. Oh, I know everything. But then slowly they are like, oh, yes, Sunita, yeah. I have to get better here. I have to get better here. I was like that, 12 years back. So please take that first step. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Namaste.
Namaste.